Hello, this is John. We were recording on a snowy Thursday in South Bend and Colorado. It's much snowier in Colorado, I'm sure. And today, well, I should probably say who we are. We are standing in the fire, real talk for founders in the heat of SaaS growth. I kind of just jumped in because I'm looking out the window and it's snowing and it's beautiful. But today what we want to talk about is company knowledge. Where does it go? What tools are available? Which kind of information should go in which tool? And kind of all of that kind of stuff. So what kind of kicked this off, I think, and I will just go on a short rant for a second. We had two Rails apps, so two applications that were serving different parts of kind of Fireside. So one was serving the RSS feeds for the podcast, and the other one's kind of serving everything else. Then we wanted to merge it all into one. And so over the course of a while, Garrett did a lot of the code. I did a bunch of the infrastructure stuff, and then in the last few days, we went through the final parts of getting this out in production and all of that. And after I did all that, I realized I have, all this knowledge about how Cloudflare, which is our CDN for caching all this stuff, receives those requests and routes them to our servers. And it goes, through all these little bits that I won't bore people with. And I was like, I'm the only one that has that, but there's other people on our team. And so I've been reading, all of us, I think, have read it. I'm the farthest through it. But Dan Martell's book, what's it called? It's Buy Back Your Time.
Buy Back Your Time?
Yeah. So Buy Back Your Time. And he talked about like video recording in there and like creating, documents.
Playbooks.
Playbooks and all that kind of stuff. And that got me thinking. So right away, I got Garrett on a call. I didn't record it. I probably should have. And I walked him through it. So at least one more person knows how this is happening and what I did and all that kind of stuff to reroute it. So that's kind of what kicked it off. We did almost like a full episode before we hit record and realized that was a good episode. We should do it. So we're just going to repeat it back for you now. So we have a couple different options we can talk about. I think we're going to, as usual, maybe go to Kris first. We have, tools, where to store it, all kinds of stuff. And maybe Kris, you could talk through some of the things that you had said before we record.
Well, and I think maybe starting with to clarify the challenges is, and there's a couple of different ones. One is, I have a few different projects, new people coming on board, non-technical by background. So finding time to transition that knowledge so that they can take over more and more things. I think, I found that to be challenging to find that time. And if I could have just, what should I have done previously? Or how can I carve out that hour to make it most efficient so that when I spend a couple hours on a specific project, it's not doing the task that should be delegated. I think then I'm going to kind of put the problems up first. Secondly, we kind of chatted about if you have a company of, let's say, even 5 to 8 people, like bigger, maybe like Box Out, how do you share knowledge of intercompany things? Some might be technical people, some may be customer success. So it's not all just in the code. So is there an intranet, that should be built, or do people look there? And then the third, I think, challenge and issue is, and how do you store and share documents? Up front, it's easy just to throw up a Word doc, on your own computer, should put it in Dropbox, but then some files are better for collaboration in Google Docs. And then people complain about, where do I find this thing? And so, I don't know. Those are, I guess, some of the problems I was throwing out of how we do it. And the solutions I have may be different than the solutions you all use from a technical standpoint. But yeah, having people all on the same page where, John, then let's just say I was a developer, you wouldn't then have to call me and have the same hour conversation with me that you had with Garrett to explain what was going on. So no, I guess I'll tee that up to kind of ask, what do you guys use or see to be most, successful for sharing that knowledge or putting that together? Or from the book, what are things that we should maybe be doing that we're not doing?
Yeah, Garrett, would you go through what you did for Fireside kind of towards the end for the technical stuff? That I feel like that would be, when I say the end, I mean the end of when you were consulting on it before you became an owner.
Well, so a lot of it context-wise came from, and I mean, obviously, you've gone through this too, John, going through due diligence when selling a company. So when I sold Sifter and, you're basically auditing yourself almost with a fine-tooth comb. And it's I should have done that a long time ago. Should have done that a long time ago. It would have helped me. It would have been easier to transition to the new owners. It would have been a unquestionably useful thing. But I went through due diligence twice because we walked away the first time. So it's just double. And ever since then, it has reinforced the value of doing this kind of stuff and documenting it. And so with Fireside, even though it wasn't an owner, I was just helping and doing some, work for Dan on the side. It got to the point as I started to understand the system better that I was like, this all needs to be written down and like glued together in some way that somebody else can come along. And I mean, it never quite got finished, but it created an outline of these are the things we need to eventually document. And then as I touched those areas, I'd fill in the things. And so that was just on a wiki for the GitHub repo. But since then, having done more and more of that, what I've found is it's best to just keep a doc or docs folder in the repo, and anything that's related to code that isn't like a specific method. So like architectural stuff or things that really only a developer is going to need to know would stay in the repo and be committed with the equivalent code changes and be documented there. Like we're all familiar with the README and the setup processes, and almost everybody will do that. Things like that. Like these are the list of vendors we use for these, for email, for blog, or whatever. And even just having a list of vendors so that like if you need to rotate keys or whatever it is, everything you're dependent on. It's like this vendor we use for this. So like if you've got an app that has one email provider for transactional email, one for marketing email, clearly written down, this one's for this one's for this. If we change this one, here's the likely areas there'll be ripple effects and that kind of stuff. But
even
then
things like DNS, like I was in the DNS and there was a whole bunch, there's keys for SendGrid, Postmark, Mailjet, like a million different email services. And I'm like, I don't think we need all these still, but I don't know.
That's been one of my favorite features of DN Simple is when you add a record now, you can add a comment that describes what it is and what it's for and who added it and when and why and whether it needs to stick around permanently or rarely. And so to me, that's huge. DNS is one of those things that long thought, like if you've got a team, it quickly needs comments or those records get out. But yeah, so then there's the other side of it, which is the non-technical side. And in this, basically, to me, non-technical is anything that is going to outlast a code commit. So like if you are committing code and something changes and it would affect the content of that knowledge, then it needs to live in the repo because it's too tightly coupled. But for other things like how to send a newsletter or process for kind of making sure a blog post gets double checked by somebody else for typos, those things ideally can live anywhere, but then you have one thing, like whether it's Notion or wherever, and that one place is the place that you always link to. And so you can go and create a video and put it on YouTube or put it on Vimeo or whatever it is, doesn't matter. I mean, eventually you probably want to standardize, but it's, there's a value in everybody being able to use their own tools that they're comfortable with. But then as long as it all is linked out from Notion or wherever that one place is, then it's centralized for findability because, if you record something and nobody watches it, did it actually get recorded? That kind of thing. So that's been is put code stuff in a docs folder and then just otherwise let people use whatever tools they want and then have something centralized that can be the glue for all those other things. So like if somebody wants to put in a Google Doc, fine, but just link to it and create an entry in Notion so that people can find it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, some central hub somewhere. Like, and I wouldn't say we currently have a central. Do we have a central hub? I can't think of one. Yeah. Yeah, Slack. Honestly, Slack, but Slack's not a paid Slack, so it only has 90 days. Yeah, 30 days, whatever. Yeah. So yeah, that's funny. So we don't have a hub, but we're also small teams, 3 people, and so it's a lot easier to know. This is here, and who should I even ask about it and stuff like that. But even in Box Out, where it's more people, it's maybe 15 people that will possibly need certain information. It can be a lot harder to figure out. I do feel like you need to have something kind of central. We've tried really hard there to like centralize on the GitHub repo for like issues and for GitHub for projects and things like that, even if we don't necessarily like those tools the most, just so that everything is kind of as close together as possible.
Even on that, I think one of the challenges with, let's say as that team gets bigger, so I've helped with a lot of the marketing stuff. I have all of that in my own Dropbox. I know sometimes other team members need some of those designs to tweak them. I did it in my Dropbox because that's how I organize my own files. And I back them up, but they're not then in the teams folder to be able to access them or access the different variations of things, which is, that whole organization. I don't know how you guys maybe better at it, but my folder structure, I start it and have good intentions. And then as we have, version 2, version 3, version 4, I don't know if you ever see those memes that show up from like designers that like their Photoshop files, and it's just like last version final 22246 or whatever.
Yep. I've never done that. I don't know what you're talking about. That's a good point too, because you use Dropbox and you keep, technically our files in there because it makes sense for you. But also we use Dropbox and we keep our files in there too. So probably we should have set up like a shared folder or something. But, it's funny because I've ran into stuff with, like, I work with our bookkeeper a lot, and she uses Google and Google Drive and stuff like that. So I remember, like, right from the beginning, she's like, you can email me stuff or you can put it in this Google Drive folder. And I'm like, I don't use Google Drive. I don't even know how to use Google Drive. I'm just going to email him, this is too much work. So finally the other day I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. So I go into, I can literally build Google Drive from scratch. I can do that. I swear to you, I could not figure out how to upload a file to a shared drive. I eventually, thankfully, AI exists. I didn't use Gemini. I'm just going to throw that out there. But I talked to ChatGPT and I was like, how do I upload a file to Google Drive shared folder? And they were like, oh, it's simple. You upload the file and then you move the file to that folder. And I was like, are you kidding me? So again, there's just, but like that probably feels very natural for, our bookkeeper because she uses it all the time. She's used to it. Again, like you, she keeps a folder for each client. Inside of there, there's like, invoices, there's other things other folders that you can put files in. That makes sense. It works in her workflow. That's what she uses. For me, I'm a Dropbox kid. And so it's really difficult for me to I just want to have it on my machine, drop it in there. I don't want to think about uploading it, syncing it, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I don't know. Tools are definitely something that, everyone can choose different tools. And so then I think really the most important thing is just standardizing on one, however you're going to do that, and then making sure that you can, share folders correctly and stuff. But I don't think any tool solves that problem real great. The actual sharing of individual folders, like most of them, like Dropbox is really good at like sharing the root level folder, but then everyone has access to all your contracts and all your taxes and like that doesn't make sense. But if you do a shared folder, they have to like bookmark that somewhere and keep it so that they can get back to it. And Google Drive was not any better at that. So yeah, it's tricky on those kinds of things specifically. So the other thing that I was really curious about, so you talked about like Word and then, Google, Dropbox, Notion. This came up in one of the Slack rooms that I have. It's like, where do you put stuff? And I feel like there's a bunch of tools. Notion's come up a lot. I've used Notion in the past. Have either of you used Notion, or do you have any? Yeah. No thoughts or?
I have learned to be relatively indifferent and more like whatever the team feels is best, just learn it. Because like there's things like Rome or Obsidian. And so like Obsidian is nice for more technical people because it's more pure markdown and like customizable and all that kind of stuff. And like you can easily, publish it, but then you can do that on Notion. To me, Notion's the broadest in terms of people being able to hop in, understand it, use it, make the most of it. Obviously, plenty of people won't like it.
And I think that, and Garrett, I don't know what your experience has been like. I think sometimes the hard part. So in a previous project a couple of years ago, there's a team that was putting everything in Notion, and some people used it, some people didn't. And so then it, like, the questions might still get asked that are in Slack or in a message that like is actually already in the thing. Yeah. And so it's like, how do you create the culture as well? Like that, hey, we're going to keep this area updated. So check there first before making it someone else's job to answer that question for you. It'd also be interesting then, does Notion have anything where you can ask it a question and then it finds the answer in the document?
That's a good question too. Yeah, like do they scan documents, index them, and then make those searchable as well? Yeah, I would love that for video. I feel like for video, that would be really nice. If you started to do a little bit, video is not scannable and it's not searchable, but if you extract the text, from it, transcribe it, etc., then you can get that stuff. And I feel like that would be really nice to have a place where you could just upload a video. You don't have to title it. You don't have to put tags in it. You don't have to think about public, private, all that. It's just like if you're at the company, you can access it and you can search, the contents that are inside of it. I feel like that would be really nice. I don't know anyone that does that. Actually, while you were talking, I started thinking about, one of the first companies I worked at.
Flag? No,
No, yes, I was thinking about swag. One of us is
go
actually
back to
wearing
was
our
that
swag.
episode 2.
Yeah, I was thinking about the first company I worked at was like this RV company, and they had an intranet, and it was like your homepage, like for your computer automatically. And I was like, maybe we just need to like change everybody's homepage and have like weather widgets again, and have like key documents and all this kind of stuff. And then every person in the company just has that, and so they cannot not find it. Some kind of start page. It's like, look, we highly recommend you make your bookmark this, or you can find a job somewhere else. No.
The challenge is like, it's different for everybody, right? So unless you just writing in general, right? Like a lot of people will put varying degrees of quality and effort into their writing, and you almost then need somebody else to review it and like make like, okay, well, I have a question about this. I don't think you covered that. All of this stuff evolves. It's a moving target, right? You change providers, vendors, whatever it is. So it constantly needs to be updated and all of that kind of thing. And so being able to comment on it and say, hey, can you clarify this part? And the person can come back in. And so it's more of a dialogue. To me, that's kind of the key to do it, and then stay out of Slack. Like, ideally, Slack is best for emergencies or like water cooler stuff, but it very easily and quickly turns into more of an evolutionary, like everything just happens in here and then we forget to push it somewhere else. So to me, you can link to a Slack conversation from Notion. So you can always say like, here's the context, what we decided. If somebody wants to go back and look at the context, they can, but otherwise really the decision and the outcome is all that matters.
What about Loom and video? Have you guys ever used Loom or anything similar? Kris, you had a reaction.
Egghead, and we'd record all sorts of things, even just from like a curiosity standpoint. Like, I was playing with this tool, here's me, experimenting with it, and more free form, like not necessarily, all heavy duty stuff. And then a lot of it would be more official, like here's how to process a newsletter and that kind of stuff. And in a way too, it also kind of laid out a roadmap for automation. So like when you want to automate something, it's like, oh, that part's a good chunk to pull out and automate because computers are better at this. And so we would use it. But then too, the downside would be you just have a ton of videos.
Yeah.
And unless you've got somebody playing the role of librarian to keep everything organized and like structured, it just gets lost because it's just so much content.
My reaction or my I guess jerk back on that was, I think more likely because I've been the recipient sometimes from like vendors, and I got to watch this 40-minute video when they're just trying to go through a quick thing. And so they have so much preamble to it. And I'm just like, I don't have time for this. And so I think that's sometimes the challenge with Loom is this is not their time to shine. Like, just tell me what it is you need feedback on and do the click around on the mockup or whatever it is. I don't need to watch 40 minutes because that didn't save me any time from having the meeting with you.
Yeah.
So I think that's sometimes the challenge I've experienced as not the creator with Loom, but as a recipient of it.
Yeah, it is optimized for the creator. The receiver is like less so. It reminds me of Jason Rudolph, who I worked with at GitHub, and I feel like he would always think very deeply when he made like a pull request or anything like that. Who's going to receive this and read this, and what will they want to see? So, headings and being succinct and bullet points and stuff like that, like trying to make whatever it was that he was trying to communicate really easy to receive. And it typically was, and I feel like that's important to think about who's on the other side of this. It might be easier to record a video, but then it's harder to, watch that video.
Yeah. The other thing and I know I'm not going to go too much of a tangent, but I think about that as you think of, I think it's relevant of like help docs and things like that are maybe even customer facing of, is it video? Is it step-by-step? And I think and we can have a separate conversation on that, but I think I get as a consumer frustrated if I only have a video option because I know I can't scan it quickly. But I know some people like to consume that, and I think if the instructions aren't clear step by step, a video time is helpful to, where did they click if there weren't screenshots. And so even with the stuff I helped you guys with Box Out, it's like, let's do a video step by step and screenshots because that kind of covers everyone's, I would say, learning style. Yeah. It's, I don't know. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like the difficult, it's easy to make once. It's harder to make, the second time or to like redo every time. Apps change, apps evolve. We've talked about that in the past about, evolution. You just said that earlier, Garrett. And it's like, as those apps change, what is the point of change where you're like, okay, now we need to update all the videos or now we need to update all the screenshots? Same thing. kind of on there. So
I wonder logistically if it could be effective to write exhaustive system tests around specific common tasks and then have it record. So it's recording the video, right? It's recording the interactions, it's recording
I see what you're saying.
video, and then it'll just auto. So like when you change a feature and you change the system test, now it's going to record that process. And now how that looks if you were to record that video, or if because it's all automated in JavaScript behind the scenes, like you can't really see much. But I mean, you'll see the browser pop open and, it's going through all the stuff. So what if you could automate things so it could be a system test and be recorded such that it then gets uploaded to a central place?
Yeah, that's a cool idea.
Now, whether it's worth it or not, I don't know. But that might be something interesting to tinker with someday.
Yeah, I've been using Screen Studio, and I really like it for recording. Like it's a lot faster than ScreenFlow for me to just record something and do some minor little tweaks, like a zoom in here, a zoom out here, add some whatever music or things like that. It's really fast for like creating when you don't really want to spend a ton of time on it. I think it's great. It's like next level, from Loom and things like that is what I would say. But then it's like, where do you put it? And like you said, how is the receiver going to want to receive it? But I think about that a lot because there's several things that like, I feel like you can almost only show if you talked about the meeting, Kris, because I'm like, again, Cam, our bookkeeper, I was like, well, we're working on forecasting and trying to get some idea of like, how can we budget into the future based on past performance. And so she like whipped together some QuickBooks stuff and sent it to me. And I'm like, I have gut reactions, but then translating those, like typing them up would take me so long, but then recording the video might take her so long, or doing a call or finding a shared time. And so it's like, I think there is this like, fulcrum point where it makes sense to record a video and then to send it to the person. But you probably want to like limit them and just say like, look, none of these are going to be longer than like 2 to 5 minutes. They're going to be really on target, and you're going to think about the person, consuming it. And the goal is to save, like you had said earlier, a 30-minute meeting or a 60-minute meeting. If you send a 40-minute video, you might as well just sit down in real life and sync up, or on Zoom and sync up. But if it's something that you can save time with, then maybe like a video makes sense. Again, I still have to figure out where to host that video because I don't want to upload it to YouTube every time. That takes forever. I just want to drag it somewhere and share a URL.
That's why Loom is nice, because you can just share it after you.
Yeah.
I think one of the, I have another follow-up question, but I think one of the things I found, so I like using ScreenFlow. I used to use QuickTime. They don't use, I guess, QuickTime anymore. Now it's like on Mac, it's a different screen grab app. But the file sizes end up being so big, and I'm like, I don't need I don't need that. I just need the smaller one. Because often, even with clients, they ask how to edit something, let's say in a website. And I know if I send them some quick screenshots in a video, that will be quicker for them to see how to do the thing. And I just want to be able to attach it to an email. So it's like 5 megabytes or less. And, anyway, there's just a thought of like, having that documentation. But probably 10 years ago, I thought of, not to digress on this more, I was like, I should create, this was before what instructions things are out there today in WP Beginner. It's like, I should create a course on setting up your WordPress site. Because this is when you had to do it all manually, literally, and it was terrible. And I thought, I can sell this. Now, I never obviously created it. I probably could have made some money on it. But I'm thinking, having videos are not only good for internal, but also external, of like, we do the same things over and over. Again, I'm thinking of how do you save time?
I just keep thinking there's got to be, and maybe there's not, maybe there's an app for this, and we're just sitting here talking, and the people listening are like, oh my gosh, these guys are morons. So please, by all means, whatever, support@fireside.fm, just send us an email and tell us you guys are stupid. This is what it is, that we all see it. So, but I was like, I would love this. And I'm picturing the same thing for Fireside eventually. Like, I want to just drop an MP3 in, and like, it makes a new episode. It transcribes it. It, picks the title, or gives me 5 choices for the title, 5 choices based on tone for the description, some keywords, some chapters, like all that kind of stuff. I would love that kind of stuff to be automatic. I want the same thing for like video. I want to be able to just drop a video somewhere, have it upload, it like AI suggest a title, description, full text, index, search, that kind of stuff, so that I can find it later. It has all of mine. If I want to organize them, allow me to organize them, make them public, or they're just unlisted and I just get a URL and anybody who has that URL can see it. Like it's very similar to Loom, but I feel like I just want to use my recording software and just have like a little, upload. It's literally just a field. You just drag it in there and it just does its thing. I don't know. I'm curious what people use for that kind of stuff. So definitely let us know what other, what you use at your company. Or I've heard Confluence, I've heard, Notion, I've heard like a whole bunch of different tools like that. I don't know. I guess there's no great answer. So maybe that is the next frontier, is this automatic, drop it in, AI, all that. I've also seen efforts. Have you guys seen the ones of like, you set up like, I use Google for this, I use, Notion for this, I use whatever for another thing, and they try to be the search across all of that for you, scope to your company. I've seen some tools like that. I can't remember the name of them now, but I've always thought that was kind of interesting. But before I was always like, it's not that hard to find, a document. And now I'm in 6 different companies with varying choices for where to store a doc. And, like Kris and I have a building together, and that's like Excel in a Dropbox folder. And then like, I have Box Out and everything is like a Google Sheet. And then we have Fireside and it's like we have Dropbox again, but we also have Google Sheets. But sometimes, we were fewer and faster, and now we're very good software, and then those two merge together. So there's folders for both of those that are separate. I'm realizing now that people do have this pain. I'm starting to feel it myself as well. Anything else you guys want to talk about, or just wrap it up?
Yeah, I had some thoughts, but I think they're completely new topics for the future of like virtual assistants and stuff like that. I think that'd be interesting to hear what you guys have done. And I have some thoughts. I think that ties in a little bit of efficiency and internal efficiency. Should we have a virtual assistant do certain of these things for us to keep things updated? But I think we should save that for a different time.
Well, and there's the things like, obviously long term, we don't need to be producing these podcast episodes, but short term, it's actually good research for us to find those inefficiencies in Fireside, so we know what we want to fix and improve. And so there's a time where doing the inefficient thing is actually useful.
Yeah, because then you can make a playbook and you can give it to that virtual assistant. So yeah, cool. Okay, I think that's pretty much it for today. So I think this is almost like a request for feedback for all 10 listeners, 100 listeners, whatever it is. This is what we want to know. We want to know, like, what do you use for docs? What do you use for tools to share information? What's your level for this is a text? This is like, text and image. This is video. How do you decide when things are internal versus external? I'm curious about all those kinds of things. So
where should they send that? Yeah,
they can send that to support@fireside.fm. That's the easiest way. Everybody will see it. I'll make sure it makes it into our Slack room, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, if you have that and you have thoughts on that, we would definitely we'd be open. And as we narrow this out a little bit, again, we're 3 people right now. It's a little easier. But we have a few contractors and various other people that are involved. So yeah, I can see it getting worse quickly to the same level as other companies. But I'd be curious what other people do, and hope that at least talking about this, maybe it'll stir some discussion up online.
Depending on where you consume this, be sure to subscribe and give us a review. It helps the algorithm. So we'll see you guys next time.